I worked for Crystal Palace. I worked for Arsenal, Chelsea, Watford, Tottenham. 5 clubs, and best club I worked for, I think, was Arsenal.
First generation black football. You think of, our brother Trevor passed last year. First generation black footballer, and it was unheard of that you would have a career according to your skin colour in those days. It was difficult.
People like Terry Hurlock, famous man out of Walthamstow. We got Steve Reed, UFC, one of the main security people for UFC. Steve Reed comes from Walthamstow.
Hakan
Hayrettin
with Pep Guardiola. Guardiola. He's his body. He's the guy. He's like the guy.
What was Walthamstow like growing up?
Happy.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was happy. We had a good childhood.
Yeah, great childhood.
We did. Honestly. We did. Everyone mixed.
Yeah.
Didn't matter what colour, what race, what size, what shape. Didn't matter. Everyone was one set of mates.
Yeah.
We've still got friends now, all these years that have gone by, and they're still our friends, and they still meet, still speak, still remember.
Yeah.
What do you think molds you together?
I think we just got the same interests. Most of us got the same interests. You know what I mean? It's like we used to live High Mill area, different part of Walthamstow. Then we moved to this area, Wood Street area, and we never saw greenery like where we lived in Sinnott Road. There was never no forest or whatever, but we just got at top end of Forest Road. We got all the forest, So our mates used to get on their bikes, and we do like run outs and all this, and it was unbelievable. Epping Forest, so big, isn't it? So
most people would see London as a concrete jungle.
Yeah.
People don't realise Epping Forest spans over a lot.
It's unbelievable.
It was like a big playground.
Yeah, it was. It was unreal, and it was good time. We had some great times.
So into the primary school years, and then into the secondary school, things change. When did the football? When did you guys start playing football and getting into football?
I'll say about 1970. We first started playing for Interwood, and it was started by Terry Gibson Senior.
Okay.
And so my older brother Trevor, then me, and then Danny. So it was a great. We had a great childhood, and everybody, we're still mates to this day. You're talking 60, 50 odd years on. We're still mates.
So football was a big.
Football was all of it. Yeah.
Relationship.
Yeah.
So obviously 2 brothers, and how did you all meet?
Well, first I met Hack. I used to play football in the Turkish league, and Hack's brother ran a team in the Turkish league. I played for this rival team, but we used to do Clissold Park, didn't we? Every summer, pre-season, we'd go over this park called Clissold Park in Stoke Newton and play football just to get fit, ready for the season, So that's when I first met Hack. And Hack was a professional footballer, so was Danny. So I was only playing non-league football, but it was good. We had some great players, and and his brother was a good player as well.
I think when you go back to these 2 guys, left and right, there's always a likability factor. They're not paying themselves enough credit here about mates and friendships, because the one thing you adhere to with the Baileys is that their love, their affection, their friendship, they go out their way to do what they do. So it's not a common thing, even though Danny said it was a happy time for them growing up. It was only happy because they showed people love and respect. I'm pretty sure that if they didn't have that likability factor, it would be completely different.
Yeah.
And Gary would talk to anyone in the street.
Yeah,
He'd talk to anyone, and that adheres people to them. And I don't think you're going to meet anyone with a bigger heart and love than Danny, and I've known him for nearly all my life. So it's a rare combination that they've got, and that's why they're like sponges. People want to be around them, And I'm fortunate that I can call these 2 for sure my best friends.
So the bond from the start was there. The football, the interests, parties, women, all of this is coming, yeah?
So we go back to the football. You're talking about second generation black footballer. First generation black football. You think of, you know, our brother Trevor passed last year. First generation black footballer, and it was unheard of that you would have a career according to your skin color in those days. It was difficult. It was different. We then paved the way and went through all of the stuff so that the guys that you see now on TV, someone says something to them which is racially motivated, the whole team walk off the pitch. Back in the old days, if someone did that, then it would be a big rug.
Yeah.
But everyone would be in. No person would be out of it. Yeah. But it wasn't recognised by outside of that. Yeah. So the bond, it didn't matter if you're black or white. Didn't matter. Didn't matter if you're Greek, Turk. Doesn't matter. Didn't matter.
I suppose that for a lot of kids, a football team was like a family. Not everyone had good times at home. Whatever was going on at home, you didn't take it on the football pitch because you were focusing on the football, right?
The Interwood family is still going and growing again. It was the biggest club and known throughout the world. You could be somewhere else. I had a friend of mine who was in LA about 6 years ago, and someone sort of recognised him, went up to him, and he said, "Oh, you're Mr. Lynch." He went, "Yes," and he went, "Yeah, I used to play for Interwood." And that's in LA. You wouldn't expect that. From this little place, this little club, we've produced so many footballers. But again, our area and our school, we went to McKenty School. McKenty, my year group, we were national champions, which nowadays is unheard of. A little school in East London. There was over 2,500 schools that entered that competition. We played at Ellen Road. We won that. It's in history. It's in the history books. But no one actually know that. This area is filled with those stories, filled with it.
I mean, they talk a lot about South London and
the
streets. And the footballers coming from there, but there's a hell of a lot of footballers that come out of East London.
Yeah.
A hell of a lot of them, and I can probably count many that came through Interwood, without a shadow of a doubt.
And it's one of them things like, so Terry Gibson Senior started Interwood. And then me and Trevor used to go out in his van with him. So summer holidays, my mum was working, my dad was working. Terry Gibson used to take me and Trevor in his van, delivering, and he looked after us and it was like we was his other kids, you know what I mean? And it was a great time. And now you got on Spanish football, you got Terry Gibson talking on Sky, Spanish football. He does all BBC stuff. He does everything. Terry Gibson, that's his son, you know, and he was Interwood as well. He was English schoolboy champion, 100 metres, English, fastest kid in the country he was. And it's just one of them things, you know, and to this day I still speak to Terry Gibson most weeks. And then you see him on the telly, you hear him on Talk Sport, and his dad was an unbelievable man, you know. All my life I've always been asthmatic. His dad would have a cigarette in one hand and he'd have his Ventolin in the other hand, and he'd be puffing away, coughing, and and I thought, how's he do it? And he done it, you know. And we had some great, all Terry, growing up with people like Terry Hurlock, famous man out of Walthamstow. We got Steve Reed, UFC, one of the main security people for UFC. Steve Reed comes from Walthamstow.
Hakan
Hayrettin with
Pep Guardiola. You know, he's his body. He's the guy. He's like the guy.
I see him on Wednesday.
Yeah.
I see
You see him on TV. Yeah.
No, I see him personally
you saw
on
him?
Wednesday in the hotel. Yeah, I was having a meeting. He was there.
Another Walthamstow boy, you know. So
Walthamstow's a bit special because Walthamstow, for a lot of years before, well, I suppose this area, it was kind of classed as Essex many moons ago, right? It was the expansion of London.
Yeah.
And this was always, you have Walthamstow Village, and it was more of a place where everybody knew each other, right?
Yeah.
And everyone stuck together. And I suppose with your football, it became a family thing. I remember being, for my every summer holidays, it was either Mum and Dad were always working. Mum was making all the trophies for all the football clubs and everything. And it was either go up to my nan's and play with all the kids on the council estate football all day, or it was to go to your guys' practices. Learn more about football, train. So all of the summer it was just football for us. You know, you could end up on the council estate anywhere in London in the summer, and you could be playing from 10 o'clock in the morning to as soon as it got dark and you couldn't see the ball anymore. And that's how it was. You'd get a quick bite to eat, but that's how passionate British people are about football. You know, it's in our blood. It's been there.
The schools in the borough made a big difference to everyone, and in those days, you were proud to go to that school. You were proud to go to that school. When I went to Warwick School, Trevor, our brother Trevor, said to your dad, he said, "That's my brother." He said, "Look after him." No, I never got bullied. I never got confronted in any way, shape or form. And that was because my brother knew your dad, knew the reputation of your dad and various people in that school. And it was like one big family. I remember taking your brother on trial, and when I mentioned his name, I was at Reading. My friend was at Reading at the time, and when I took him, I drove him up in the morning for training. We left at 7 o'clock, and I picked him up and took him to Reading. When he mentioned his name, the whole changing room went like that. He was in the building. That's how, you know, I say about your family. That's you, your brother, the skill level and the reputation and the respect. You went to that school, you got respect. You played football, you got respect, and you were known. Hack is exactly the same. Exactly the same. North London and East London, very connected, where we are.
It was right on the border.
Right on the border. Right on the border. And footballers, very, very talented people. Opportunities were not so common, but we made the best of whatever it was. And that's what Walthamstow, and that's what East London, and that's what the people from here were like. You made the best.
I spent all my time in East London. My favourite clothes shop used to be a place called Alphabet in Hoe Street. I used to be there every Friday. Every Friday when I used to be there. Then I used to be straight in, you know, Gary and Danny's house, and I never used to go home really. I used to just stay there. And it was a great time for me growing up. Hoe Street was one of my favourite streets. Eat, drink, get my clothes, and go to Danny's afterwards.
I think even as a Londoner growing up in London, you never took it for granted. There was always stuff going on.
Yeah.
It's a city that was always. You could never be bored. There was always something. You know, if it was an event with music, if it was a place to go shopping, somewhere to eat, there was always places that you spent time. So big sense of community. So as football went on and you progressed and you become professional, what came with becoming professional in your eyes?
Leaving home.
Leaving home.
Yeah, growing up.
Yeah, becoming an adult.
I left at 16. I signed at Bournemouth, and Gary and his best mate Cliff drove me in his Rover P5, 3.5 litre engine, white.
That's the cost you
Was it did. But those days petrol was cheap. But it was unbelievable to drive down there and come out the car, and then your brother drive off and never see him. Like, you don't go back. You just stay there. So I lived in Bournemouth. I made my league debut at 16. I was Dave Webb's signing. My youth team coach was Harry Redknapp in the end. I used to look after Mark and Jamie. I used to babysit them at the club. But they weren't babies, but I used to look after the young lads. My life at 16 to sort of 18 was like fantasy. It's like England youth trials at 16. I used to come back to Walthamstow. My mum saved the clippings of our local paper, and my name's in it, and it's Danny Bailey signed at Bournemouth, and superstar, this, that, and the other, and you know, it's just times you just don't forget. And then when that moves, you know, football is what it is, and you come back, you have to do something else. And being from East London, you learn to adapt. I was a mechanic for a little bit. I was a van driver. And then I became a pro footballer again. You know, I went abroad and played Trevor was playing in Cyprus. I went over there and played. I met Hack. Gary phoned me up one day. I was at Exeter, and years after, and said to me, "Can you get him a trial?" I spoke to the manager. I said, "I've got a player really good, come out of Tottenham."
I just come back from playing in Turkey at the time. Yeah.
What was it like in the Turkish clubs then? Because I don't again.
Well, I was obviously I knew Gary really well and Trevor. Danny was living in Exeter, and I got a transfer from Barnet to KSK, Karşıyaka in Turkey, and my manager was an English guy called Mike Ferguson, and the same again, leaving home at a young age, and it was an unbelievable experience, but it didn't last long because at the time Turkey were in conflict with Iran and Iraq, I think, something like that, and there was going to be a war, and it's quite funny because over there when they do things, it's more of a club, so the basketball, the football, the running, all the boxing, all fall under the same umbrella, and they called me to the head office, and the chairman basically said, look, Bernard Schuster, who was an unbelievable player, is down the road on holiday and we want him to sign for us. We wanted to become a Turkish citizen, and at the time there was three of us. There was me as a foreign citizen, even though my descendancy is Turkish, Steve Walford that played for Tottenham and Arsenal, and a goalkeeper called Jurasevich. And I phoned up my parents and they said, no, don't become a citizen, national, because they could conscribe you to the army. And I phoned the PFA, and Brendan Batson at the time said the same thing to me, and my stay was cut short. By the time I could get back to my apartment, when I said no, all the furniture had been taken out of the apartment, and Steve Walford went, well, that's nice, where are we going to sleep? So I came back, and I had to go to the Court of Arbitration because I didn't want to go back. I got scared after what happened, and they wanted me to go back, and I was on a good deal, good money. And that's when I spoke to Gary. I said, Gary, look, I need to get a club in. I don't want to, And that's when my friendship with Danny really started, and ever since then we've become best friends.
My manager said yes, bring him down, brought him down. He stayed. We lived together about 2 months. About 2 months. Came down
Where was you living at the time?
in Exeter at the time.
And what was it being like from London and moving to Exeter?
It's the most. I talk about this not so often, but it was so different.
Yeah.
The way of life is so different outside of London. And when you go that far to the West Country, everything's slower, just calm. It's a beautiful place. Where we live in Walthamstow, obviously the forest is just up the road, but there it was everywhere. Yeah. Everywhere. And you come out city centre, you're 2 minutes outside and you're in the countryside. So it's beautiful. The people are amazing, absolutely amazing people. The fans, I'm a very known character person in that part of Devon, especially in the city centre and in following the club. We were very successful when I went there. We won the league when I signed that year. It was almost like a brand new team. We won the league with 10 points clear, third round FA Cup, third round League Cup. Got into the Team of the Year, PFA, so Championship medal. It was different. It treated like footballers are treated in that sense. As like stars.
It does help if you're a good player as well.
And if you're really good, yeah. If you're good at what you do.
Danny was.
Yeah.
Danny was in that area, was a good player. Good player.
Yeah.
Very well respected.
So being in an area with that kind of bit of fame and being from London, what was the obviously you were training and playing hard, but what was the
benefits?
Yeah, what was the nightlife like?
That's the $6 million question.
Yeah, that's it.
Not really.
What
It was
came
not
with it?
what came with it. So every Wednesday night we would go, me and my best friend down there called Toby Redwood, we would jump in a car and drive down to Torquay, which was at that time was was a fantastic place. It was like being in London, but you're in the West Country. And all the lads from Torquay United, we used to hang out with those. So Jamie Undar, Paul Hall, Mark Hall, they were all playing for Torquay United. We used to meet up with the Torquay United players and go to a nightclub. So the benefits would be, the queue would be probably 200 metres long. We'd walk straight to the front of the queue and bouncers would move everyone aside. We'd walk in there with celebrity status, VIP treatment everywhere. You never really paid for a drink, you never paid to get into a nightclub. They would almost beg you to pay you to go in there. Role models throughout the town, you know, the nightlife was limited because you're in the West Country. But the influence you had on people was far more than just being a normal 9-to-5 guy and just being a normal footballer.
I suppose for a lot of people, a football club from where they're from is everything. For a lot of people, it's their socialising, you know, to get out of the house.
Community.
It's a community.
Yeah.
It's a community, right? So I can see being in them areas and having that sort of status helped a lot of people, right? Winning a league for a club like that.
They've never won it since. They've never won it since. They've been promoted, but they've never won the league. And by that margin as well, during that time in football, every game was like going to war. Every game was like really like going to war. There were no easy games. And everyday training, we trained far more than they do nowadays.
Yeah.
You know, you had one day off if you were lucky. You had one day off a week. And we were fit, we were strong. But the message, you could walk down the street and people would come up to you and speak to you, and you would speak to them. I don't think you get that now. You know, footballers are made out to be, you know, film stars. Yeah. You're not. You're a human being who just happens to be very talented at playing football. So you have to give something back. Yeah. And we all have been giving back. Gary's been scouting for Tottenham for God knows how many years he was scouting. You know, changing lives. Hack, footballer, manager, coach, been changing lives. And myself, footballer, coach, mentor, dad, mum, uncle, brother, sister to people and changing lives. You know, so that's that football community. That's what this place, this area gave us.
I think having people like yourself probably kept a lot of people out of crime, out of prisons, maybe channel themselves in different ways and change their lives, you know what I mean? Because, you know, London's always a place where if you want to find trouble, you want to find crime, you can find it there, right?
Absolutely.
But football has always been that safe
Absolutely.
To keep you out of the stuff.
Yeah.
So always make sure that you can't let your team down, got to wake up on a Sunday morning.
Discipline, it's a discipline, isn't it?
Yeah. Clean boots, don't forget your shin pads. You know, these are traits that we gave to people, we give to people, we still do it. We're all still doing it. All still doing it. So that's what came out of this place. And when it comes to football and how you are treated, you have to give back, and we've been giving back.
And money was different then. Like, as a professional football player then, what was
We were talking
like
about
now?
this earlier.
Yeah, we were.
I wish I was a player now.
Was there any such thing as sponsorships back in the day or not?
Yeah, you were sponsored.
Yeah, you got sponsored.
Yeah, you had sponsored.
You used to
But
get
they
a
weren't
car
like-
as well, wouldn't you? You used to get a
I
car.
was
Yeah.
quite lucky because when I was a kid at Leighton Orient, there used to be a restaurant called the Phoenix Apollo in Stratford,
Oof.
not far from here. Penny and Gill, great guys.
Yeah,
Two
great guys.
Great guys. Took a liking to me, sponsored me. When I was a young lad, I was only 18 at the time. They used to have every single page 3 party in there in the restaurant, and they used to sponsor Nigel Bent. I used to go and see Nigel's fights all the time, so I was lucky in that respect that I got to mix with some good people. And, you know, Nigel Bent was just, I used to go and see him fight and train. It was amazing. And Penny used to phone me up, where are you? And go, yeah, I'm here. Come on, let's go. They used to take me. So they were the perks for me of being sponsored by people like them. And the Phoenix Apollo, which is not a million miles away from Walthamstow, was an amazing place at the time for me.
And so Exeter, would you say that was your peak of your?
So I would say the peak of football, one of the highlights of football, I say There's been so many peaks, so many moments that you go, that will never happen again. But when we won the English Schools Trophy for McKenty, we played against Yorkshire, and the team at York, when they had the programme, every kid in their team was signed somewhere. They're at Leeds, Everton, Liverpool. They were signed, the whole team. They looked at our team, and we had a guy called Paul Wilkins who was signed at Tottenham, and that was it. And everyone else was like not signed anywhere. We won. We beat them 2-0, smashed them up. They didn't know how to handle whatever. And after the game, our change room door, we were all celebrating. Change room door flies open, and a guy, a little Scottish guy, walks in, and he says, "Where's the lad Billy? Where is he?" And I was sitting there. I used to have really long hair, and I was sitting there, and he said to my he said, "Where is he?" And he said, "See you. I want you. I want you." And that person was Billy Bremner. And only years on, and years later, I understood who he actually was. When you go to Leeds United, Ellen Road, and you see a statue of him outside, and you go to Scotland and they talk about him and what he was, and he said, "I want you because you play like me. You remind me of me." And I thought that was like, that's coming from football legend, from a football god. It's coming from that. To say that was a moment that I'll never forget. And I was 15 at the time, which is really strange.
So, do you think at the time when you were playing at that standard and the wages were at that, where you earned nice money, but still at the same time you're doing something you love and passionate about?
It's not work.
It's not job.
It's not a job.
See it as a
No,
job.
no, it's not a job.
But do you think if you got paid even more money that you would play as hard?
Yeah, I think like what Danny said earlier on, and I think Gary can vouch for this because he's been doing it for so long, scouting. Society's changed, people have changed. We used to graft. Danny said earlier on, we probably got one day off, and even then we probably didn't want that one day off. Now is how many days can I have off and get paid for it as well.
Yeah.
Where we earn a reasonable salary, doing what we love, that we didn't see it as a job. And we were very, very fortunate. I'm pretty sure that if we were playing today's era, we'd be earning a lot more than what some of them are now, because we had that. And I think that's got a lot to do with your upbringing and about the people that you surround yourself with. Like what Gary said earlier and what I'm saying about Gary and Dan. The likability factor, the determination to push and to drive. And, for us, growing up, and like I said, on the border, uncompromisingly, we wanted to be the best at whatever we did, in training or playing, or even playing tiddlywinks with your mates against the wall, or like Gary said, you wanted to be the best. That for us was uncompromising. You had to be the best. And I think now society's changed so much. Like, it's not within them,
It's this snowflake society. People so petty on things,
And that's not a detriment to today's society or what's happening. I mean, I've got children. My son's 19 and he plays. And I say to him sometimes, in order to be the best, you've got to want to be the best. You've got to push yourself to the max. And
there's nothing wrong with being competitive.
And every time you do something, you want to say, I want to be the best at what I want to do. And that's what we had in abundance.
Yeah.
That may be everyone's ability is measured in different ways. And Danny, Billy Bremner compared Danny to being like Billy Bremner. That in itself is an accolade. But he wasn't gifted like Glenn Hodd or Billy Bremner. He had a different way of doing things. His way of doing things was to roll his sleeves up and work as hard as he possibly could. And I think that's what's missing in society today with some of these kids.
Yeah, I think football didn't only get now political, but it's also, I suppose, in your era of football, if you tweak something on the field, you try and get through it.
Yeah.
You would have that. I'm not. It's a cup final. I could go off with a pulled hamstring, or am I going to try and get through it, push through it, because I want to be part of it?
Yeah.
And I think that now the money's there and the comfort, most people won't push themselves. I've seen it with international football. Euros on, and some players, because they're not going to get paid enough to represent their country, well, I'm not going to play. There's no point.
You're crazy.
It's changed so much.
Whereas you should be playing for the pride of
yeah,
the country. You should matter about money.
Of course, yeah. We would probably have, I don't know, Danny would like, we should have a manager, an assistant manager, and a coach and a physio. Now, there's a manager, assistant manager, head coach, free kick specialist, S&C coach, analyst, psychologist, mentor. Before you know it, there's about 20. And we can't do that. I remember because I worked at Luton Town Football Club for 4 years, where we got plenty of joy. And in the academy, we had a young lad goalkeeper that was going to be in the first team. And he come in, and they said, "We can't. He's done enough." And the manager looked at me at the time, my boss, John Steele, and he said, "Go and tell him he's training. He's got to train." You know, that's what we didn't have, and that's what pushed us on to be what we were. And he's going back, Danny's talking about the team sheet when he was an under 15, and there was no real connection with any clubs barring one, but probably they were so much more talented and so much more driven than the team in Yorkshire. That's why the reason why they won, not because they were connected, because they had to prove, they had to push. And I think that's a big thing that is now missing from the jigsaw with these youngsters. But when you come to an area like Walthamstow, it's not that missing. Because when you've got people like Danny and Gary and Interwood that's homing in and pushing, I went to one of Danny's sessions. The session had finished and he spoke longer than the session, actually getting his point across to tell the kids, mentoring them in such a way what's required. That is vitally important. That's like an education that they're getting free of charge. So
I think it becomes more personal because I think you get Gary and Danny can vouch for this. You probably had kids turning up, the parents were so good, they weren't fathers. You become fathers to them because you see the ability that they have, and you wanted to take them further. But without the right stuff going on at home, it's very hard to get kids to push in that environment.
Like you say, there's a lot of single parents now. When we was growing up, there was always mum and dad was always watching football. But nowadays there is a lot of single parents. So it's hard. It's hard for the kids to come through, and if they're not getting taken to football, and they've got to make their own way to football as well. That's a tough thing as well. You know, when I used to do Interwood, my little team, there was always a team called Chettle Court, and that was a housing estate. Chettle Court, Chettle Court, and it's like in Walthamstow we had Priory Court, and this Chettle Court, this coach, he used to take all his team, get them on a bus to get them to football games. There was no parents watching, just this coach had two coaches. They had all the team on the bus, and one time they was playing a London Cup game. I was scouting for Tottenham at the time, and I was waiting for them to turn up, and we was like, God, what's happening? And in the end, they eventually turned up an hour and a half later, and first the other team were going, no, we're going to cancel the game now. But I said, listen, that manager's took the whole team, got them in the end, and I think Chettle Court won in the end. So it was good in the end that they did win, but you know, the manager, there was no parents. But now, when you see Chettle Court now, 10 years down the line, there's all parents watching the team.
To be honest though, Gary does it now, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He's got a 4x4, and I've seen it many times when there's about 10 of them in there, and he's taking them to games, and he's bringing them back, and he's taking them training. So he's mentoring, he's coaching, he's delivering, he's taking and he's bringing. So
what if we talk about Danny? What do you feel that you get out of this helping people that much? How does it make you feel?
Guidance.
Yeah.
You know, they need guidance, and it's not one kid; it's every kid. It doesn't matter if you're rich, in middle, or poor. It doesn't matter. They all need guidance. If they're not getting it from school, they spend more time in school than they probably spend with their parents. So they respect probably their football coach more than they respect anyone. And I understand that, and I try to understand how they're feeling and go to their level of thinking thought process, and then try and find out what they actually want to do in life. I was speaking to a player yesterday who's 28 years of age. I said, what are you going to do? He said, I'm van driving. I said, why? You're super talented. What are you thinking? You could do more.
Yeah.
And these kids will understand, if you don't become a footballer, it doesn't mean that your life ends. You still play football. I want them to still play. They have to still play. You need the knowledge to keep playing at a certain level and a level. And that's what I give them.
Life skills, isn't it?
And their life skills as well. You know, are they hungry enough? Are they prepared to get up when it's cold, wet and windy? Do they want to get up? You know, that. Or do they want to stay in their bedrooms, play PlayStation, finish at 16 years of age, the gates to the wide world open up and they don't know what they're going to do? You can't be 24 years of age and not know what you want to do in life. You should know before you leave school what you want to do and what you aim for.
Where did you do your apprenticeship? At Bournemouth?
At Bournemouth.
So I did mine at Lake Norrie. I had to be in for 8 in the morning at Lake Norrie, and I used to leave by 5. When I was working at Luton, we got invited to go to Tottenham to speak to them. I got invited to go to Tottenham to speak to them about what it takes to be a professional footballer. I'm talking about the under 21s at the time. And it was like they were shocked what I had to tell them and how they had to do it. They had PlayStation stations, they had pool tables at the training ground.
They have.
You were
Nice,
Gary,
yeah.
Gary
Table
used to work
tennis.
there. Table tennis.
Yeah.
They had a lounge, TV lounge, and I'm thinking,
Chef.
their own personal chefs.
Yeah.
We had boot polish, some brushes, some brooms, and some washing machines.
Yeah.
That's how we learned. That was our upbringing. When I went to Tottenham, I thought, I don't have to do anything here. They finished training, have something to eat, play a bit of PlayStation, play a bit of pool, watch a bit of TV. Then the
Jump in their cars?
teacher comes in, they do about an hour of studying, and they go home.
What cars?
You don't want to know that.
Yeah. But my point to that is, it's not to say that, we had it so hard back in the day and they've got it so easy. Not. Discipline is discipline. Doesn't matter what it is. If you're going to join the forces, the army, then the guidelines are still the same. They haven't changed. The game hasn't changed. The ball is still round. Still takes 2 teams. And you've got to try and defeat your opponent. It's the same game. Difference is, I think players of the past and what the players of the future need to understand that your football life is this big and your real life is this big. What will you do in your real life? Because this is just a fantasy. This is a fantasy world. This is your dream job. What will you do after this? Whilst you're in here, can you do something? Can you achieve something? Can you do something that makes this part of your life easier?
I think that's what you see with a lot of professionals that came out of football and got into addictions and other stuff because they never had anything to set them up for after football.
Mental health is an issue, and I, being released of my contract and my phone not ringing off the hook, you know, depression, rejection. I had to deal with moments of dark moments, and you think not so dark because I always knew I could do something because in my life I'd done more than one job. But I remember when I was released at 18, I phoned my mum. My mum said, Mum, they're not going to sign me. And she said, that was on my 18th birthday. She said, don't worry, darling, come home. Everything's going to be all right. I cried my eyes out, put the phone down, came back, and then decided what I really wanted to do, which was become a footballer. And then I worked and trained and perfected my craft and my knowledge for 7 years and signed at 24. So not everyone's done that, and not everyone could do that. But I knew what my focus and why I was put on this planet Earth, what I was meant to do. And now we're in a stage of life where we're meant to do something else, as well as, now can I start? You said, what do I get out of it? I know why I was here. I need to explain that to other people to make them realize why they are here. We're here for, everyone's here for a reason.
Yeah, it's almost, I think for a lot of stuff, people don't see that a lot of this stuff is spiritual guidance. We need that.
You become a team player. You know how a team works. So our job now is to try and give.
Yeah.
And what we're doing is giving.
Yeah.
We're giving guidance. We're giving jobs. We're giving experience. And the one thing, when I signed at 24, 25, a player there who works in the PFA, which I must say is like an amazing union to be a part of. You sign for that union, you sign for life. Yeah. They look after you for life.
They do.
It's unheard of in society. They absolutely are amazing. He now works for them, but he was playing at the time. He's like 450 league games. And he said to me once, you can't buy experience. You just can't buy it. There's no substitute for experience, he said. And I've always remembered that. So now when we're speaking to that kid who's 10, who's 11, 12, 14, 15, we know, we're telling you this from experience. We've been there. We've seen it. We've done it. Learn, this is what you need to do to become that little bit better. And a lot better, you need this. Because we know, we've been there. We're the perfect people, perfect examples to young people. We're the perfect example. We've been there, seen it, done it. The good and the bad.
Since 2000, I suppose. Since 2000, I've been
Gary's got more experience like this than anybody.
Yeah.
Thousands.
Yeah, a lot of kids. Yeah.
Gary really, he knows what he's looking at, he knows what he's looking for. He's looking at the parent, he's looking at the attitude, he's looking at the appearance, he's looking at everything. He knows if they're a little bit humble, he knows if they're a little bit cocky, you know. They're his life skills he's looking at that. Can he do it? Has he got it? Firstly, has he got the ability? But who is he? What can he do? His background, everything. You know, Gary's been doing it a long time, so. And he knows so many people that a lot of people phone Gary up for a lot of advice.
It's one of like I work for Crystal Palace, I work for Arsenal, Chelsea, Watford, Tottenham. 5 clubs, you know, and best club I worked for, I think, was Arsenal. The club I worked for, Arsenal. I'm a Tottenham supporter.
I remember who got me to Arsenal because I was at Arsenal as a kid as well.
So it was me and Trev used to do the Arsenal because Hale End was just across the road from Wadham Lodge. So we used to do the football for Arsenal. That was Roy Massey, Steve Leonard. Roy Massey, Steve Leonard, both. And then the goalkeeping coach was Alex Welsh as well. So Alex Welsh, still one of the best coaches. He played with Danny at Wealdstone. Fantastic.
Arsenal at the time, with JVC Centre and all that.
Yeah, that's what Arsenal used to.
It was an unbelievable club.
Great setup.
David Seaman would join in.
Yeah, Seaman was there.
Yeah.
I used to coach.
Everyone was there to, free tickets all the time. Whenever you want. It was something different. I remember Mark Noble was there. He was a year above me. Joe was a year above Mark. It was a big community of there. It was really good.
You got to remember at the time as well. There was some good players. Your brother Joe was a great player.
Great player.
In the team with Colin Kazan Richards, Charlie Daniels. Charlie played for Bournemouth but started off at Tottenham.
Didn't he end up at Leighton Orient?
Leighton Orient as well. Yeah, Leighton Orient. And then I used to coach Charlie Sheringham, and they used to say, "Oh, he's not as good as his dad." Well, he ain't going to be as good as his dad. His dad was a great player, Teddy Sheringham. And then we had so many good boys, like David Seaman you mentioned. I used to coach Thomas and Daniel Seaman, his sons, and they used to come into Wood every week. They weren't the best players, but they used to come every week, and we had players like that, you know.
I think there was a lot of players when I was playing that weren't the best, but with dedication. When I fell out of football, and they carried on, they got to where they eventually
they did. Yeah,
I mean, they might not have been world class players, but in what they played in, they played very well.
Yeah, you know, there's a lot of boys. We had a boy. His dad, one of the best people at Arsenal now, Sean O'Connor. Well, Brett O'Connor was a top player He's at Spurs, and eventually he didn't get signed in the end. He was at Spurs for about 4 or 5 years, but in the end he didn't get his apprenticeship. Come out of football. I think he's a plumber now. But listen, he had a great time, and he's got them memories to go back. You know, to say, look, I was at Arsenal. I was at Tottenham. I've done a bit. You know, and it's very hard. These players. I've got a boy who now and then I speak to this boy in Australia. So his name's Bobby Wilson, and Bobby Wilson says to me, "Gal, I'm the best car dealer in Perth, and I still play semi-pro." You know what I mean? Listen, this boy was a wicked player. He was at Arsenal. He was at Crystal Palace. He ended up moving out to Australia, and he's still playing a bit now. You know, he's still doing a bit. You know, and it's nice that now and then you do on Facebook. It's a great thing, Facebook, because now and then they contact you and they say, "Oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing that," and it's so good. And I'll never forget them. I'll never forget these kids. When I see them, I can say, "Oh yeah, he used to play with me at Raglan School, or he come with me at another school," you know. So I've been at several schools. I've done Tottenham football in the community as well. And these boys, you just see them now, big men. They've got their own kids now, but you never forget them. You know what I mean?
I don't think I'll ever forget you lot. That's the way it is, you know.
Yeah.
So this is
Which is great.
I think, especially for equally for women's football as well, but especially men. Men need that release of testosterone. They need physical sport. I think it's important.
I think though what Danny said earlier on, which has probably formed Danny's character and probably mine to an extent to be who we are, was that rejection. Being rejected is probably one of the hardest things in the world. It's like getting a divorce. Like you're embarrassed, you want the hole to appear, you want to go in it, you don't want no one to see you because you feel you're not good enough, or you feel that you don't warrant to be somewhere. And that actually makes you, obviously what Danny said, either stronger or weaker. Obviously in Danny's case, and in my case, it made us stronger to push, to survive, to strive. And it's them lessons that Danny really homes in on and gets the kids to understand this is what you need to do, this is how you've got to do it, which is so important, so important. And I actually, like for my career as a player and as a coach, and I'm right on the border, I keep talking about South London, about being the hub. But I actually believe that East London, especially Walthamstow, is the hub. So many kids have gone through Interwood and other clubs associated in the area that have produced, that have gone on to do well. Bradley Johnson, one. Wesley Thomas played for me, came out my academy. Like, the kids from Danny. But the rejection part for Danny, I think, and for people like me, to make us believe that we can do it, is pushed him to push that message on to these kids. This is what you need to do. And, you know, football's not going to be for everybody. But the lessons that we're trying to give, or the lessons that Danny's giving, is that there's life after football. You can mould yourself into something if you stick to these guidelines and discipline.
That's it. You use your basic tools that you learn from that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember playing for Ridgeway Rovers. I remember when Beckham's career really started off. And I remember him coming all the way back just to give out trophies. All the way from Manchester,
amazing,
just to give out trophies. And that, for a kid like me, that was unbelievable at the time.
You know, I see loads of OBEs and MBEs to be given out to local people. And if there was anything like that, I think the guys to my left and right who've done more than me, I'll be honest with you, because, you know, I am mentoring a different way today. They should seriously look at these two guys and give them one of them medals, because the amount of kids that they've gone through, and I talk to Danny every day about this, and you know, we were doing my garden during COVID, and all the Interwood kids come down, and something would go wrong, and we'd stop. We'd all have to stop because Danny said so. Everyone got a life lesson for about half an hour before we carried on.
Yeah.
You know, all these kids come from Walthamstow, by the way. So the catchment area, the lessons, you never stop learning, you never stop pushing. You know, I think is vitally important. And the message is, uncompromisingly, whatever you do, that he was saying, you got to be the best. If it's digging a hole, you got to be the best. Take pride in what you're doing. That was the message that we were giving these kids. And it was a hot day as well. It was a hot day. I mean, really hot. Wow. And we'd be standing out there, and I'm saying, are we going to stop it? But for about half hour, that would be their break. But then, as they were having their break, they'd be getting a lesson as well.
I've got one of my lads, he's just a complete role model, Omar Beckles. Club captain at Leyton Orient, chair of the PFA. Was brought up less than a mile away from here, as we're staying. Raised through us, through his family, amazing people around him. He's become the most humble, the most articulate man you could ever wish to meet in your life. So proud of him, just incredible. You know, would he have had that? Would he have that career without this place, without us, he would probably be the first to say no. He was always destined for something, to be great, and he is truly a great human being. Giving back. You know, you go to Leyton Orient, you'll see him. He walks in, he says hello to everyone, and that came from the upbringing. That's what we give them back, is that.
Preparing for also that point that if you get that famous, still be humble.
Absolutely.
People remember where you come from and be proud of where you're from.
Absolutely.
You know? So what would you say the most important thing that they need to do right now?
Enjoy their childhood.
Yeah.
Enjoy it.
Enjoy being a child.
Yeah.
You are only 6 once, 7 once, and so on. You are only once. You have to enjoy that time. Enjoy your friends. Go and play. Be a kid. Don't think that if you're not in an academy, you're not whole. You are.
To a point. I mean, we're here in the GP70 now, and the community officers come and see me. And there's a lot of kids out on the street. There's a lot of kids out on the street. And I said to the community police, I don't know if I told you this, I said, get them off the street. They can come in here with me. They can have a drink. They can play pool. Take them off the street. Whilst they're here, you know, we will talk to them and we will engage with them and we will mentor them. Just to get them off the street so they can enjoy being a kid again.
The kids this generation, they need to learn to love each other. They need to learn to love, not to hate, not to do bad things to each other. They've got to be, I say, more importantly than being a great footballer, be an amazing human being. If you're an amazing human being, everything else will fall in place throughout your whole of your life.
I think what you put out, you get back.
Absolutely.
So if you're always going to put something, I mean, you can be a good person, you can meet bad people all the time, but
Sure.
I think what I learned with my travels and people that I've met is that kill people with kindness is much easier than with violence. You know? It's much easier to be nicer to someone than it is to be horrible, and it feels better, even if they don't feel the same way.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it is. It is.
It was a life skill. I wish I was you. What places?
Yeah, that's
Thank you
good.
very much, guys. That was
Thank you
brilliant.
so much.
No problem. Thanks, Jake.